just about ready here. Just about ready here. Tonight we're looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 8. Ecclesiastes chapter 8. Tonight, studying through the book of Ecclesiastes. And tonight we are going to be studying book of wisdom known as Ecclesiastes, and we're going to continue our study tonight in chapter 8. Chapter 8 is a very interesting chapter. We're going to talk about tonight. We're going to go over the subject of human government. Human government. So we are live now. Welcome to those who are listening. Thank you for tuning in. The live stream on YouTube, we welcome you. Thank you for listening. Appreciate your support as we're covering Ecclesiastes chapter 8. We've been going over a lot of good sections in this book. It's a great book that we've been looking at. We've been going and trying to get a glimpse into Solomon's sight of how he sees life. Solomon is giving to us a picture of functions in the world under the sun. And each week we've been looking at how he is observing and absorbing and providing for us feedback to really the wisdom of life, what life is about. We've been talking about this subject of wisdom beginning with last week, but really all of this is wisdom literature. Solomon is giving us bits of wisdom, and he thinks wisdom is something that's very significant and very important. So tonight we're going to look at the subject of wisdom, and we know that wisdom is a great thing. Let's first find out what wisdom is, though, as we go over. So let's look at the definition of wisdom. It says wisdom. Both of these are reoccurring things that you see in the Bible. They are, but they're not synonymous, not the same. Wisdom, really what it is the ability to discern or to judge what is true, what is right, and what is lasting. Knowledge, on the other hand, is information. Information, you get it through experience, it's gained through experience, through reasoning, or being acquainted with things. And you can have knowledge without wisdom. But you can't have wisdom without knowledge. You can't have wisdom without knowledge. In other words, one can be knowledgeable without being wise. For example, knowledge is knowing how to use a gun. But wisdom and wisdom. God, of course, wants us to have knowledge about Him. That's one of the things that He wants. And that's what He expects for us to know Him, have knowledge about Him, to know who He is. In order to obey him, we have to have knowledge. What he commands for us, what he wants from us. But as equally important as knowledge is also wisdom. Having knowledge is good, but having wisdom. Just know some facts about God and know facts about the Bible, that's okay. But there's more to that, because we also want to have wisdom. The wisdom for the believer is a gift from God. It's a gift from God. So the book of James, and chapter 1, verse 5, it states, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So God blesses us with wisdom. Blesses us with wisdom when we just ask. It glorifies him when we use it properly, and when we have the proper knowledge of him. Wisdom. I was listening to a sports report the other day, and he talked about, I don't know how many of you recall, he's the father of a basketball player, young guy, and he started a shoe company that ultimately failed. It was called Brand. Now, he probably has some knowledge on how to get some shoes and make things happen, but he didn't have the wisdom to carry this out. He had knowledge about shoes, but he didn't have the wisdom how to control a business, the wisdom to run a business, the wisdom to how to market, the wisdom, a lot of different things that comes with time. And he was a person that you couldn't tell him anything. He was very arrogant, he was boisterous. I'm sure he wanted the best, but he had knowledge, but not wisdom. And ultimately, his business failed. Ultimately, his business failed. Is what is needed in life, wisdom. So Solomon was a man of great wisdom. And he applied many of the things that he learned regarding wisdom, and he recognized that we need wisdom. And he recognized there is a benefit of wisdom. But wisdom, even though there is a desire and it's important and we want it, it has limitations in regarding overall knowledge. There's some things even wisdom can't give you the answer to. There's some things that even wisdom can't give you the answer to. And so, the book of Ecclesiastes tonight, we're going to look at chapter 8. Because we're going to talk about wisdom as it relates to what we would call human government. You know, we think about the government and look at how government runs. And so Solomon wants to bring us into how a government functions and how you can use wisdom for a government to go well and for you to function well in a government and how to live life in a government. And all of that is brought about through something called wisdom. So let's look at our text for today. The first thing it opens up, excuse me, it says, who is a wise person? In verse 1 of chapter 8. Verse 1 of chapter 8. It says, who is like a wise man who knows the interpretation of a matter? It says, a man's wisdom illuminates him and causes his stern face to beam. Okay. Excuse me, everybody. So the first thing it draws us to in verse 1, it draws us to who is a wise person. And it says that verse 1 is going to bring us into some instances of wisdom. Instances of wisdom. And verse 1 is going to give us the praise and the benefits of wisdom. Of wisdom. So it says a person who is wise, he says, a person who has a bright appearance, who has a soft countenance, is a person who's approachable. To the point of praising the person that is wise. When you know a person is wise, these are some of the characteristics of a wise person. Now, Solomon also wants to bring us into the realm of if a person is wise, can they function in the world that they are part of? If a person is wise, can they live right? Can they function in a government or a system using merely their wisdom and everything will turn out right? In other words, if Solomon says, I want to tell you how if you are living right, doing everything right, and using wisdom, you should be able to function well in government. This is what he's going to talk about. In other words, in the society that you live in the world that you live in, if you are using wisdom, he says that wisdom will protect you and guide you. Now, as we go through this, we're going to find out that Solomon's going to make some general points, and he's going to bring it back around to this idea of a person functioning and living by wisdom. Because he's observed something about wisdom, and he says if you live in a certain way, and you carry yourself in a certain way, things should work out just fine. You live in a certain way, and you function in a certain way. If you live your life wisely and do what's right, things should turn out fine. So listen to what he says and what he's observed when it comes to obeying the rules in a government or a system in the world that he lives in. So the first thing he says in verse 2 is what? So we'll read that for us, verse 2.
I counsel you, keep the king's commandment for the sake of your oath to God. Do not be hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand for an evil thing, for he does whatever pleases him.
Okay, so verse 2 and 3 goes into keep the commands of the king. In other words, if you're living in the world that you're living, be obedient in that world, obedient to the government. Don't rush to get out of his presence. Don't rush to get away from what you need to do. Don't rush from trying to do this. Being obedient to the government. And he says this because in many ways, in living in the world that you're living in, the government has a certain amount of authority, or a king has a certain amount of authority, and he does what he wants to do. So the government does what it wants to do, regardless of what it is that we believe that we want, or what we do, or what we do. Ultimately, they do what they want to do. We see that a lot of times in the news. We saw how sometimes the government has policing the world, or they kill somebody and the police get off. The government just nothing you can do about it. So Solomon says the best way to be and to live life is to be obedient to the government, because the government ultimately will do what it wants to do. Because it says in verse 4, it says what? It says, since the word of the king is authoritative, who can say to him, or who will say to him, what are you doing? In other words, who can come against the king or the government and tell them what they're doing? So the best way to stay well, and the best way to live well, and the best way to function in a proper manner is, number one, is to be obedient to government. Solomon says this keeps you or protects you. In other words, this is using wisdom. This is using wisdom. So this government is set up. Now Paul talks about that in Romans. He says that we are to be obedient to the government. We are to be subject to our rulers. God has set these rulers over us. And so Solomon seems to believe, it seems to say, it seems to want to point to, that in doing this, this is a wise thing to do. In doing this, this is a wise thing to do. The overall view is that by us obeying government and obeying the king, this will protect you in the end. Verse 5 says what?
He who keeps his command will experience nothing harmful, and a wise man's heart is and judgment.
Okay, so he continues on with this theme or this idea of being obedient, and he says, by doing this, you won't experience trouble. This is what he's observed. Solomon says, I found out that I've noticed that when people are obedient to the government, or they're obedient to the king, they're obedient to what the government says, that they won't experience any trouble. And by them functioning in a way to carry out their life at certain times, be careful, do what you're supposed to do at a certain time. There's a proper time for doing things, there's a proper way of doing things. And in following Solomon, he says, I have noticed that this is a wise thing to do. 7, what does he say?
Verse 7, verse 6.
Verse 6, I'm sorry. Verse 6.
Because for every matter there is a time and judgment, though the misery of man increases greatly.
Okay, so in life, he says in verse 6, for there's a proper time and procedure for every delight, this is one of my verses says. A man's trouble is heavy upon him. In other words, you're carrying out life, and you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, but it's a proper time to do everything, and what you want to make sure that you do in doing everything right. You're doing everything in the proper time. You're doing everything that you're supposed to do in living under the rulership of a king. This is a wise thing to do, according to Solomon. So Solomon is bringing us into the behavior of wisdom. The behavior of wisdom. This is what it looks like. This is what it means. This is how we are to perform. Now, in observing this, his point is that this will save you a lot of trouble and you won't have hardships of life. This is what he's first observing. Now, he's going to give us a bigger picture, but right now, he's giving us a clear idea of what he believes is wisdom. And according to him, at this beginning part of this chapter, he believes wisdom leads you to do these things. In other words, if you're carrying out, you're living in wisdom, and you're living life by behaving wisely and functioning wisely, everything should go well for you. Now, the ultimate thing that Solomon is going to ultimately find out is that wisdom, even though in doing everything it has limitations. He's going to tell you about that in a minute. But first of all, he's drawing you into the idea of what he sees about wisdom. Behaving, doing what's right, doing what's done in the proper time. Do it, everything's going to turn out right for you. Verse 9, what does he say? Verse 8, I'm sorry. Is it 7?
7.
7, no problem. 7, go ahead. 7 and 8.
For he does not know there is no discharge in that way, and wickedness will not deliver those who are given to it.
Okay, so the first thing he says is that wisdom will guide us in life, and for us to behave in life because we have no control of how we're functioning in the government that we live in. Now, one of the examples he's going to give, he's going to talk about in verse, if you go over verse 8 again, verse 8 says, I'm going to read it in the NA, and it says, no man has authority to restrain the wind with the wind, or authority over the day of death, and there is no discharge in the time of war, and evil will not deliver those who practice it. Now, this is a very odd set of things that Solomon is saying. Let's see if we can wrap our minds around kind of the gist of what he's saying. Basically, what he is saying is this. When you are behaving and when you are doing right, you are supposed to understand that you are in the control of a king. And you're supposed to do what is right because a king has control over you. Much like if you are a person who is going out to war. You know, if you're drafted by the army, the government sends you out and you have no control of whatever happens to you. You don't know when you're going to die. You don't know if you're going to get shot. You don't know if you're going to come home in a body bag. And so he says, the best thing for you to do is obey the king, obey the government, and things will go well for you. So if you practice evil, you practice wickedness, things are going to take place. And what does he say in verse 9? Now, verse 9 brings us into what I would call the limitations of what as he's looking at wisdom as being the guiding point to help you, as wisdom as being the thing that will protect you, as wisdom as the thing that will lead you to less problems. Verse 9 begins to draw clarity to what else the Solomon sees. And verse 9 says this, all this I have seen and applied my mind to every deed that has been done under the sun, where it exercised authority over another man to his hurt. Now look at what he said in verse 9. He's saying, I've seen the government function, and I've seen how government is to protect. I've also seen how government hurts people. To obey the king, right? I've also seen how the government ended up hurting and destroying people. So in many ways, when you look at us as black people, we have been people who have obeyed the government, done what the government's asked us to do, but we still end up on the wrong side of the government's hand. So for some people, obeying the government is a good thing and things work out well. And Solomon says for other people, it doesn't work like that. The government ends up hurting people. So he now has found in wisdom and looking at behaving as there's a failure in wisdom to do what? To control government, to be honest, and to do what's right. In other words, wisdom has limitations. You can do everything right. You can be a good citizen. You can be a person who lives by the law. And Solomon says, I've seen it where it doesn't work out. I've seen it where the government has been corrupt. I've seen it where the government has killed people. I've seen it where the government has done harm. And we times today. We do horrible things to people. You know, you think of the Holocaust. You think of enslavement of the black people in America. You think of the Vietnamese people that were killed under Pol Pot. All these are examples of the government harming people. And often these people were obedient to the government. They did everything that was right. They did what they were supposed to do. And the government ended up slaughtering them, killing them, murdering them, harming them. So Solomon said, human government, and all, regardless of whether you are trying to use wisdom to navigate through it and be a wise person, wisdom has limitations. Wisdom has limitations. Wisdom has limitations when it comes to governments because they are run by flawed human beings. They are run, they are operated by fallen men. As long as human beings are running anything, you're going to have problems. As long as human beings are running any aspect of the world, there's going to be flaws in it. There's going to be trials. There's going to be instances where there is injustice. There's a great deal of injustice in the world that we live in today. There's a great deal of injustice to lots of people. All over the world, you see people having unjust things happen to them. People being killed, and the judicial system does nothing. People being slaughtered, and the judicial system does nothing. The government doesn't take care of any of these people. So Solomon has recognized this in verse 9. He says, I've seen it. I've seen the government do great harm to people. Now, verse 10, he draws that the issue of government is the issue of wisdom's limitations as it relates to government. Wisdom also has limitations as it functions in everyday life. Wisdom also has limitations as it functions in everyday life. He is now noticing that. He says, man, I notice how wisdom fails through the government. I've also noticed that wisdom fails in everyday life. One of the things that as believers that we have to recognize that the world that we live in is not a world that is going to be a cakewalk for us as believers. It is going to be filled with trials, it's going to be filled with tribulations, and as black people, it's going to be filled with lots of different things. Struggles, racism, problems. There are many things that we're going to encounter. And these are things that the Bible has promised to many people. That they will go through all kinds of trials and tribulations. So, verse 10, here is an issue that Solomon seems to want to draw in terms of wisdom and its limitations and how we function in everyday life. So, how we function in the government, but wisdom also he sees in everyday life. Somebody read first verse 10. Read verse 10 and we'll come back to verse 11. What does it say?
Then I saw the wicked buried, who had come and gone from the place of holiness, and they were forgotten in the city where they had so done. This also is vanity.
So he says, I saw something else that was really interesting. He said in verse 10. He says, I would see wicked people go into the temple, maybe a funeral or whatever it is they're going to. I would see them come back out, be boasting, bragging. People didn't even think anything about it. And these people who were wicked, good things happened to them. That's basically what he's saying. People who were bad, nothing took place even after they went out to worship. They would go to worship, or they would go to a temple, or they would go to a place where some funeral was going on, and they would just continue on doing whatever they did. And he said this is something that was futility, or this was an enigma, this was something that was very strange to them. Because verse 11 it says what?
Because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, the hands of man is full set in them to do evil.
Now look at what that verse says right there. That's a very interesting verse. What he is saying is that when people do evil, sometimes you have corruption with people. People steal and they get away with it, and they continue to steal again. They rob and they get away with it, they go out and rob again. They murder, they get away with it. It happens again. You see it with not only individuals, you see it with the government. You know, the government, they shoot and kill people, they get away with it, they go out and do it again. In other words, whenever there is not justice implemented, what happens is that people continue to do this. So Solomon is saying that the wicked, to him, is wise and doing what is right and doing what is good. He says, I've also seen where the wicked get away with doing things again and again and again. That's what he says in verse 11. That evil gives way to more evil. In verse 12, he reiterates it and he says, although a sinner does evil 100 times and in his life, still I know it will be well for those who fear God, who fear him openly. But it will not be well for the evil man, and he will not live in his days like a shadow because he does not fear God. Now Solomon seems to contradict what he is talking about earlier, but he's not really contradicting. So let's look at what Solomon is trying to say here. The first thing he's saying, I recognize that it appears on the surface that people who are doing evil, they get away with it. It happens. I know that takes place. I've seen it. I know it's true. But I also know that when people do bad things happen to them. I know that people do bad things, their days come to a short. I know that people who obey God. That's basically what he's trying to say. He goes, I'm not. Verse 13, but it will be not well for the evil man, and he will not lengthen his days like a shadow because he does not fear God. In other words, in the end, he says, not knowing God will hurt you. Not knowing God will hurt you. Now, he wants to draw wisdom on a broader scale, but he also wants you to see something else about wisdom. That he recognizes that what wisdom brings to the table. There's a futility in terms of what wisdom brings to the table. In verse 14, someone read that for us. Let's see what it says there.
There is a vanity which occurs on earth, that there are men to whom it happens according to the work of the wicked. But again, there are wicked men to whom it happens according to the work of the righteous.
Okay.
I said that this also is vanity.
So Solomon said, what I have also noticed, now I know that, he says, I know that God will lengthen the life of people who do well, and I know that he will shorten people's lives when they do evil. He says, but I gotta be honest. That's basically what he said in verse 14. There's something that really is strange about this whole thing that I'm seeing, this whole thing that I'm noticing. He says, it appears that there always is a way in which I see the reverse happening. In other words, happening to them. See wicked people who get righteous things happen. This, he says, is very strange to me. This is vanity. This is an enigma. This is something that I can't grab a hold of. In other words, there's a limitation. And to me, figuring out why these things happen. And it's a limitation for us to find out why these things happen. Why is it that a child dies whose family is a good family, they go to church, they love the Lord? Why is it that someone who's lived a good life and then they get killed by a car accident? Why is it that a person who is wicked and curses people out and steals and commits adultery and on and on and on, and they live to a right life, Why is that? So someone says, this is really strange to me. This is an enigma. This is something that I can't understand. And this is something that is beyond the wisdom of human understanding. Because things work together for God's purpose and God's plan. And oftentimes we don't know why. We may think that we know why. We may think we say, this is the reason why something is happening. We may think this is the reason why something is taking place. But in reality, we don't know why things happen. And so this is what Solomon world of injustice. What do we do in a world where I've been trying to use wisdom to help me and to figure out how to live a good life? I've been trying to use wisdom in a way that I think that will help me to see the world and how the world operates. He says in verse 15, he says what?
So I commended enjoyment because a man has nothing better under the sun. Eat, drink, and be merry, for this will remain with him in his labor. For days of his life which God gives him under the sun.
Now, it's a very interesting thing. What he says is that what? I've come to the conclusion that I must have to live my life, eat, drink, do what I have to do, and then recognize that what? I have a certain amount of time that God has given me on the earth, and I have to enjoy life in the midst of me not being able to figure out mentally what's going on with the world around me. In other words, I've got to come to the conclusion that I can't always figure out what's good, what's bad, what's working, and what's not working. Sorry for the light that's shining on my face. People watching me on video. So verse 16 says what? He says, now that I recognize that the government, me having wisdom to figure out the government, that I come to the conclusion that me having wisdom to figure out human is just a limitation to human wisdom in general. Verse 16 and 17, what does it say?
When I know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, even though one sees no sleep day or night, then I saw all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. For though a man labors to discover it, yet he will not find it. Moreover, though a wise man attempts to know it, he will not be able to find it.
Okay? So this, I'm going to read you to another version too, what it says. Solomon says in verse 16, when I try to gain wisdom, to observe the activity on earth, even though it prevents anyone from sleeping day and night. In other words, I've been up day and night trying to figure all this stuff out. I can't figure it out. I had to come to the conclusion, well, in verse 17, I discern that all that God has done, no one really understands it at all. No one can really find out what's going on the earth. No one can really know what God is doing, what he's not doing. Despite all of the human efforts, he says, to discover it, there's nobody that can grasp it. Even a wise person, if he claimed to understand it, he's not going to really understand it. Even though he thinks that he can figure it out, he can't figure it out. In other words, the wisdom of man has limitations. When it comes to the things of God. Now next we're going to look at verse 9, and we'll talk about the whole issue of and death. And Solomon's going to draw to us his reflection on the world in general. He's going to talk a little bit about verse 9. So next week, chapter 9, not verse 9. Chapter 9. And we're going to go over chapter 9. We're going to look at Solomon sees life in a broader scale. We're going to look at it in the realm of living and dying. We'll talk a little bit about that next time in Ecclesiastes. We're coming to the end of the book. It's pretty quick. We're already at chapter 9. And we'll be there next week. Any questions, any comments?
Can you go back very briefly to verse 3 where it says, do not be hasty to go from his presence, do not take a stand for an evil
he's saying that if you don't do that, if you don't do evil things, if you don't do bad things, the king won't, basically saying that the king won't punish you. That's basically what he's saying. Because there's verse 3 and verse 4, right? What's the verse 4? Because I have a different version. What's verse 4 say?
Word of a king there is power, and who made him? What are you doing?
Yeah, verse 4. Your question was on verse 4, right?
Well, verse 3, I just wanted to know what does it mean? Well, don't take a stand for evil things.
In
Or
other words,
evil things.
don't take a stand, don't do anything that's evil, is basically what he's saying. Or don't follow anything that is, that you know is wrong. The real gist of it is, that he's saying is that by behaving, the king will treat you right. By doing what's right, the government will treat you well. If you do what the government tells you to do, then you won't have any problems. And then Solomon at the end finds out that's not true. Because the government does bad things all the time. I've always seen the government language. So it's kind of like when he's getting this. It's important language. That's basically what he's saying. Okay, anything else? Let us. Well, thank you for